Michigan's Senate Majority Leader, Mike Shirkey. Hi, Mike.
Hey, Bart. Good to be here with you.
Nice to see
I
you.
still maintain the best spectator sport there is high school basketball.
Well,
I
would
just
agree.
love high school basketball. I was there Friday night at the Michigan Center game. Saw you guys, running around taking photos and videos and stuff. Great game. Fun game to watch.
It is a fun atmosphere, and really Friday night, that was, really the epitome of March Madness.
Mm-hmm.
Huge crowd, and unfortunately another one of your schools, Columbia Central, ended their season Friday night.
I know, yeah. But that Vandercook game, the Michigan Center Vandercook game was kind of just depressing too, but I think Vandercook kind of fell asleep there at the last second and let him in the door. So,
Well,
but I was rooting for the Cardinals. I like Napoleon too. I like the coaching staff out there, but it was a great game.
Yeah, I would give Napoleon first place for best uniforms. I think Napoleon this year had the best uniforms. I like the Argyle pattern on the side of the shorts.
Yeah,
especially the away jerseys.
Yeah, it was great.
Obviously, the whole world upset about the Ukraine invasion, and here in the United States, we're seeing effects of it on the wallet. Gas prices we're seeing go up, and last week the House passed legislation that would suspend the state's gas and diesel fuel tax for the rest of the fiscal year. Tomorrow, I believe it's going to be coming to a vote in the Senate.
Very likely will come to a vote in the Senate tomorrow. But I want to talk a little bit about the source of that. Yes, what's happening in Eastern Europe exacerbates the problem, but the source of the problem is our very poor energy policy in the United States and in Michigan, quite frankly. And gas prices since the last election have gone up almost $1. And only in these last few weeks have they gone up, like 30 cents. So we have a serious chronic problem with energy policy in the United States. And it's manifests itself with not just gas price increases, but all kinds of supplies increases. Because, for instance, farm goods requires a lot of transportation to deliver them. And so food prices are going up. It's just across the board. We have an inflationary leadership in this nation. All because they have certain policies they want to promote, and it's starting to show its effect.
So what's the solution?
Drill, baby, drill. So the oil and gas, particularly the oil in North America, burns. If environmental concerns are the top priority, and they may be, the oil in North America burns substantially cleaner than all the oil that's produced in the Middle East and in Europe. And so we should be replacing theirs with ours. We're helping the environment and maintaining ourselves as standing out as independent from an energy standpoint while we transition to more renewable energy.
Oil is oil.
The source of it, where it comes from, the kind of substrate that it's mined out of, determines the chemical makeup of it. And North American oil burns cleaner.
So we have pipelines that were killed in the Rockies and also here in Michigan. Should those be functional?
Sure. Government almost always messes things up economically when we start to overmanage. And then, of course, we can't let this conversation go by without talking about Line 5. Now we've had yet another study come out that the effect on closing down Line 5 is multiple $1 billion, not just in Michigan, but throughout many of the Midwest states. And we should be getting out of the way and allowing Enbridge to put that pipeline in to secure and make it safe for the Great Lakes, and allow the economic development that occurs with that kind of investment, which will cost taxpayers in Michigan zero. And there's no reason, this should be evidence enough for Attorney General Nessel and Governor Whitmer to just stand aside and say, we've changed our mind. We need to let that thing go because we now have real evidence of what happens when we're not paying attention to good policy and energy.
A lot of people just are befuddled with how gas pricing is determined in the first place, and there is, even out of Lansing, some House members saying, you know, we could lower this tax or eliminate the tax, and we really won't see any effect on the pump price.
Well, the only people who are saying that are those who don't believe in markets. I think there's enough competition, particularly at service stations, gas stations, that the people would smell out what will happen. How many times have you been in the grocery store or the pharmacy or wherever, and somebody said to you, hey, I just bought gas today, it's 5 cents cheaper over here in X, Y, and Z. So if 5 cents makes a difference, then 35 cents will make a difference as well. And I think people are smarter than that. So it'd be a shock to me. I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but it'd be a shock to me that the stations wouldn't accommodate and reflect that change.
So short of a change of energy policy, which would take a long time to be felt at the gas pump, years perhaps, should the Senate pass the suspension of the fuel tax and the diesel tax?
Well, the governor wrote a letter with 7 other Democratic governors asking the federal government to suspend the federal tax. Well, if that was a good idea, why wouldn't suspending a tax that we actually have control over also a good idea? So maybe you still haven't had the governor on the show, have you?
We've invited her.
Yeah, because that's another question you should ask her. If this gets to her desk and she happens to veto it, you'd have to ask her. So you supported asking the federal government, let somebody else pay the pain of removing their revenue, but you wouldn't agree to doing it at the state level. I just think that's a complete inconsistency that should be called out. Yes, we should do it. I think we should get rid of the sales tax on gas too. And finally use this opportunity once and for all to right something that just has never made sense for a long time.
So is there legislation that would eliminate the sales tax?
There's movement in the legislature to move in that direction. There is not, I don't want to mislead you, there's not legislation on the table yet.
The governor's not come out and said whether she would sign or veto this gas tax suspension bill, but
she's alluded to it.
She has, yeah.
But somebody in the media needs to ask her the question: how is that inconsistent with? How is that consistent with what you submitting a bill or a letter to the federal government asking them to, put a holiday on their tax?
Her spokespeople have said the governor doesn't want to lose $750 million in road funding at a time when that's her priority.
Well, there's a lot of arguments there that we can clarify. First of all, she's unilaterally, without any legislative input, bonded for all the state level roads, and has done that and put us into more debt into the future. Another is we've already received a bunch of money from the federal government for roads, and we're expecting another influx of infrastructure funding from the federal government. And the third is that we've got projects planned out for the next 2 years, being engineered and which are all funded, and so there'll be no interruption. We got $8 billion surplus. If we had the will to do it, we could backfill it.
Yeah. So with that surplus and the fact that the feeling in the state that reduction in taxes would be a popular thing as a taxpayer, the governor's kind of in a bad spot.
I don't know if a bad spot. I think it's a great opportunity for her to demonstrate that she's listening to people and acknowledging that she actually has a significant role in causing this inflation, not just in fuel, but across the board. Supply chain shortages, all related to unnecessary and now proven to be illogical shutdowns that have contributed mightily to the inflation that we're experiencing right now.
What's your feeling on whether she would sign if the Senate passes this and it gets to her desk?
I think it's a coin flip right now.
Really?
It's a coin flip right now. Yeah.
She's also got SB 768 in front of her, which would lower the personal income tax rate from 4.25% to 3.9%, reduce the age for which you'd receive an exemption on retired income to age 62, and also provide a $500 per child tax credit. Mm-hmm. That's been passed, House and Senate. It's on her desk.
Yeah, with bipartisan support.
And she's not she hasn't signed that yet either.
No, the 14-day limit is quickly approaching on that. First of all, in her budget presentation a month ago, she actually proposed some very narrow income tax savings for certain special interest groups, and so that told me that she was amenable to considering some tax reductions. We strongly believe that everybody who survived COVID should be considered a frontliner, and everybody should receive any kind of tax reduction relief that we might contemplate. I'm a big believer when you reduce tax revenue, you increase revenue. You reduce taxes, you increase revenue. And what we're proposing, first of all, we're fulfilling a promise that the legislature, not necessarily this serving legislature, but the legislature made a number of years ago when we increased the income tax to 4.2.
It was supposed to be temporary.
Right, and so now it's time for us, with the financial condition that we have in the state, we should fulfill that. And then the $500 tax credit for children, I think families could use that seriously. And then I'm fully supportive of the improvement for the seniors as well. That doesn't mean that they would stop working, but they'd be able to keep more of their money. All of those are good. All can be funded. Quite frankly, the revenue consensus report indicated that we're going to have nearly $1 billion of additional new revenue surplus for going into the future. That pays for almost half of it.
It's all revenue from taxes, sales taxes. It's all money that Michiganders are paying.
Right.
And with that, it's a surprise. The estimates are billions higher. The taxpayers of the state want that back. Want some of that back.
I think they deserve it back. Yeah, I think they deserve it back. The proposal for a $74 billion budget almost took my breath away.
So the point now we're at is the governor's asking the legislature to sit down with her to plan next year's budget, but there's some hesitation on that.
No. The appropriations chairs and the budget director for the governor, they've been meeting regularly. There's very intense conversations going on right now, both on supplementals and on the budget. So we're working together.
Yeah. And before Governor Whitmer was in office, the budget was completed by June 30th for a few years with Governor Snyder. Right. But not last year, not the year before. Where are we going to be this year?
I'd say we're going to be mid-June time frame. Yeah, that might also be affected by the fact that it's election year. So those running for re-election want to get out and campaign.
Now with being an election year, you'd think tax reductions would be a popular thing for a politician to favor, but should the governor not sign either the gas tax reduction or the personal income tax reduction bills, would the legislature override?
I don't think we'd have enough votes to override. One of them, we may try an override vote, but that would require a number of the Democrats in both chambers to, take a pretty serious courage pill, and vote on that. So.
All right. One thing that is expected to come up in front of the Senate this week is your bills on reform of mental health funding here in the state of Michigan. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about what your idea is and where it sits?
Okay, so go back in history a little bit. Michigan made the transition to managed care model for essentially Medicaid citizens of Michigan who are on Medicaid a couple of decades ago, actually almost 3.5 decades ago. And we now have what many consider to be the model managed care system in the nation for physical health. We've kept physical health and mental health bifurcated all those years, developed a community mental health model, but now as that has evolved, now the type of mental health that you receive, if you are particularly a Medicaid recipient, would be highly dependent upon what your zip code is. And if you happen to have the right zip code, you'll get great services, and if you happen to have a a different zip code, you may not. There's no portability to it. So in the population of Michigan, if we learned anything, there's a lot of mobility that takes place. People move around to take new jobs and so forth. And there's no mobility associated with it. And another problem that we're trying to solve is, if you happen to be traveling, you live in, you live in Kalamazoo and you happen to be in Jackson and you have to go to the hospital and you got a mental health challenge and you're in an emergency room. Well, nothing can happen until there's a daisy chain of calls from the local one, mental health, to the other county where you're from, then back, and it contributes to delays in service. And also, I believe that the integration of physical mental health is really important to get a proper assessment of what really is needed. For instance, for you and I, that we have some kind of commercial insurance, we only have one portal to go through. Our insurance covers both, and it's largely coordinated. But there are many cases, too many cases, where Medicaid recipients are being treated by a physician for their physical health conditions, and them being partially blind, or if not fully blind, by what mental health issues they may be having. And then another thing that is really important is if you're not paying close attention to somebody that has mental health issues and they're not keeping their meds, et cetera, in balance, it actually makes worse physical health conditions. So all of that paints a mosaic. There are those who are opposed, particularly community mental health services they've got well-established, but I'll say long in the tooth delivery models. There are some, as I mentioned a moment ago, if you happen to have the right zip code, you get great services. Jackson, we happen to be one of those. We have terrific mental health, community mental health systems here. And most of that would go largely untouched because it's so good. The health plans that I think would help contribute and marry and integrate the services, they don't have an army of mental health providers standing idle. So anybody who is delivering quality mental health today, they have nothing to worry about. So
you're right. There is a lot of opposition, and surprisingly, the Community Mental Health Association of Michigan, leading that opposition, the organization that oversees, that includes all of organizations like Lifeways, and it's pretty vehement opposition. They've gathered support from a lot of other organizations. In fact, a couple weeks ago, they put out a 4-page, single-spaced list of all the organizations that are opposed to this legislation. So if it's such a good idea, why is the opposition so?
Well, there's a lot of providers who are afraid to be public about it because CMHs, not all, I'm going to be careful about painting with too broad a brush here, but there are many CMHs who take out retribution to providers who may take a different stand. I mean, there's some serious problems associated here. Most of the arguments I should have brought that with me, and so we could have gone through it one at a time, but most of them are straw man arguments.
HealthWest put out a graphic on social media. They're the Lifeways of Muskegon.
Right.
They said your bills will increase costs to taxpayers by $300 million by doubling overhead.
Actually, it reduces overhead, so there's a pretty good example there where we have a
will eliminate local control. Will turn over control to for-profit insurance companies.
Oh no, we can't have for-profit involved in.
Will not increase access to care.
That one is very arguable. So now, but again, they're largely straw man arguments that are advocated by the Community Mental Health Association. And if you ask them a few specific questions about, well, do you think this is good? Do you think this is going well? They'll say no. They'll say there needs to be improvement. And then you ask them what do they want to do, what are they proposing to change it? And it's a bit of silence.
Is it going to come for a vote tomorrow?
No, not tomorrow.
No.
Not tomorrow. No.
Do you have the support? Do you have, is it partisan support?
It needs to be partisan support. This should be if there ever was a nonpartisan issue, it needs to be this one. And quite frankly, that's why I'm holding it in the Senate. We could get it out with Republican votes, but it needs to be bipartisan, because this should be a very bipartisan issue.
When are you going to bring it out?
Pardon?
For a vote, when are you going to bring it to a vote?
We're getting close. We're getting close. Yep. We're getting very close.
Are you waiting for the votes?
For the bipartisan votes, yes. We have the votes in the Republican caucus to send it to the House, but again, I'm staying committed to my word. It needs to be a bipartisan issue.
And what's the sense in the House?
I don't know. They've got other projects and other priorities right now. You know, we haven't started working it over there yet.
All right. Well, you enjoyed your St. Patrick's lunch as
I
as
certainly
I.
did. Boy, did that taste good.
Do you have a tradition on St. Patrick's Day?
I try to stay out of trouble.
All right. Thanks for all your time and all your information.
You're welcome, sir. Good to be with you.
Our state senator and Senate Majority Leader, Mike Shirkey. Stay tuned. We've